Why is Rhaenyra becoming a tyrant? Ryan Condal explains. Hot TD warning. This video contains major spoilers for House of the Dragon Season 3, especially the finale and Rhaenyra's changing relationship with power, prophecy, and the people of Westeros. Rhaenyra Targaryen was once presented as the woman fighting for her rightful place on the Iron Throne. She wanted to be queen because she believed the crown belonged to her. But by the end of Season 3, something has changed. Rhaenyra is no longer simply fighting for legitimacy. She's becoming increasingly willing to use fear, violence, religion, and even her own interpretation of prophecy to maintain her claim. So is Rhaenyra actually becoming a tyrant? And more importantly, why? Interestingly, House of the Dragon showrunner Ryan Condal has directly explained this transformation, and his comments give us a major clue about where Rhaenyra's story is heading in the final season. 1. Ryan Condal says Rhaenyra is being driven by desperation. This is the most important point to understand. Ryan Condal explained that the show has been exploring what happens when Rhaenyra is imbued with the idea that she is part of a messianic story. But there's a crucial distinction. Condal emphasized that Rhaenyra isn't actually the chosen one. Instead, the show is interested in what happens when she believes she has been given that kind of destiny. And that belief changes her. Condal described Rhaenyra's transformation as being connected to her desperation to win at any cost. That's the key. Rhaenyra isn't suddenly becoming cruel for no reason. She's under enormous pressure. She has spent years fighting for the throne. She has lost children. She has lost allies. Her enemies continue to survive. And now Aegon has returned. So Rhaenyra increasingly believes that ordinary political methods aren't enough. If she truly believes that the future of the realm depends on her, then almost any action can begin to feel justified. And that's how a desire to protect the realm can slowly turn into authoritarianism. 2. The prophecy makes her feel chosen. The Season 3 finale makes this transformation impossible to ignore. Rhaenyra publicly declares herself connected to the prince that was promised prophecy. This is a major change from the earlier seasons. Previously, the prophecy was something shared privately within the Targaryen family. Now, Rhaenyra uses it publicly as part of her claim to legitimacy. Condal explained that this moment was deliberately designed to represent a seismic change in Rhaenyra's relationship with the people of Westeros. And that is incredibly important. Rhaenyra isn't simply saying, "I am the rightful queen." She's essentially saying, "I have a greater destiny." That makes her claim much more dangerous. Because once a ruler believes they have been chosen by destiny, opposition can stop looking like legitimate disagreement. It can start looking like betrayal. 3. Her problem is that she can't separate destiny from power. Rhaenyra has always believed the prophecy matters. Her father passed the knowledge of Aegon's dream to her. She believes the Targaryens have a responsibility to protect Westeros from the darkness that will eventually come. But there's a problem. The prophecy doesn't necessarily mean Rhaenyra herself is destined to rule. Condal specifically pointed out that Rhaenyra is not the actual chosen one. The show is therefore exploring a fascinating question. What happens when someone believes they have been chosen for a greater purpose, but they are wrong? Rhaenyra may genuinely believe that taking the throne is part of protecting the future. But the more desperate she becomes, the easier it is for her to justify extreme actions. 4. Aegon's return makes everything worse. The return of Aegon II is another major turning point. Rhaenyra had every reason to believe that her rival was defeated. But suddenly, Aegon is alive. And even worse from Rhaenyra's perspective, Sunfire is alive too. That means her victory is no longer secure. The threat she thought she had eliminated has returned. And this helps explain why her behavior becomes increasingly extreme. Every time Rhaenyra thinks she has won, another threat appears. Instead of giving her confidence, the war has created paranoia. She begins to see enemies everywhere. And once paranoia takes hold, power becomes something she has to constantly defend. 5. Rhaenyra starts using fear. This is where the comparison to tyranny becomes much stronger. Rhaenyra executes the High Septon after he refuses to legitimize her coronation. She also becomes increasingly hostile toward those who question her authority. These aren't the actions of the Rhaenyra we saw earlier in the series. The woman who once wanted to be accepted as queen is increasingly behaving like someone who believes obedience is more important than consent. And the show intentionally places these actions alongside her prophecy speech. That combination matters. First, she uses violence against someone who challenges her. Then she declares herself connected to a greater destiny. The message is clear. Rhaenyra is no longer simply asking people to recognize her authority, she's demanding that they accept it. 6. What happened to her relationship with Mysaria? Her relationship with Mysaria also shows how isolated Rhaenyra has become. Mysaria was one of the people who helped Rhaenyra understand what was happening in King's Landing. She provided information, she offered another perspective. But eventually, Rhaenyra sends her away. That's significant because rulers who become increasingly authoritarian often lose the people who are willing to challenge them. Rhaenyra doesn't necessarily need people who tell her she's right. She needs people who tell her the truth. And as her desperation grows, those voices become harder for her to tolerate. 7. Helena's death makes her transformation even darker. The death of Rhaenyra Targaryen also becomes an important emotional turning point. Helaena had often functioned as one of the show's moral centers. She wasn't interested in the political struggle in the same way as the other Targaryens. Her death therefore removes one of the few remaining characters who could stand outside the cycle of revenge. And Rhaenyra is left even more isolated. The war has taken so much from her that she has increasingly fewer emotional connections keeping her grounded. That's part of what makes her transformation tragic. She isn't becoming a tyrant because she suddenly stops feeling anything. She's becoming one because the war has changed what she believes she must do to survive. 8. Is Rhaenyra becoming another Daenerys? This is one of the biggest questions fans are asking. There are obvious parallels between Rhaenyra and Daenerys Targaryen. Both believe they have a legitimate claim. Both believe they can create a better future. Both become increasingly convinced that their cause is morally superior. And both eventually face the danger of believing that their destiny justifies their actions. But Condal's comments suggest the comparison is intentional. He described the show's exploration of Rhaenyra as a story about what happens when someone is given this messianic idea and becomes desperate to win at any cost. So Rhaenyra isn't simply becoming Daenerys. The show is exploring a broader Targaryen pattern. Power begins with an ideal, then comes fear, then desperation, and eventually the person holding the power can become the very thing they once believed they were fighting against. 9. Does Rhaenyra actually believe she's doing the right thing? Probably, and that's what makes her dangerous. Rhaenyra doesn't appear to think, "I'm going to become a tyrant." She thinks she's saving the realm. She believes the throne is hers. She believes the prophecy matters. She believes her enemies are threatening the future. And she believes that if she gives up, everything she sacrificed will have been for nothing. That's a very dangerous combination. Because when someone believes their cause is unquestionably righteous, they can begin to justify almost anything. The question becomes, how much freedom are other people allowed to have when Rhaenyra believes she is protecting them? 10. What does this mean for Season 4? Season 3 has essentially positioned Rhaenyra at the beginning of her darkest transformation. And Condal's comments suggest this is exactly what the show wants to explore in the final season. The Dance of the Dragons isn't simply a war between two sides. It's a story about what power does to people. Rhaenyra wanted the Iron Throne, but the longer she fights for it, the more the throne changes her. And by the time she finally has the power she spent years chasing, she may no longer be the same person who originally wanted it. That's the tragedy. Final thoughts. So, why is Rhaenyra becoming a tyrant? Ryan Condal's explanation gives us the clearest answer. The show is exploring what happens when Rhaenyra begins to see herself as part of a messianic destiny, someone who believes she has a greater purpose and must win the war at any cost. Condal has stressed that Rhaenyra isn't actually the chosen one. The fascinating part is watching what happens when she starts behaving as though she is. Her desperation is turning into certainty. Her certainty is turning into paranoia. And her paranoia is turning into control. The prophecy gives her a reason to believe her actions are necessary. Aegon's return gives her another reason to be afraid. The loss of Helaena and her allies isolates her further. And every time someone challenges her authority, she becomes more willing to respond with force. That's why her transformation feels so tragic. Rhaenyra didn't begin this story wanting to become a tyrant. She wanted to be recognized. She wanted justice. She wanted the throne she believed belonged to her. But after years of war, loss, betrayal, and desperation, she is beginning to believe that winning is more important than how she wins.